Hello again, this is Victor James, author of the Megacosm, and I finally watched Hardcore Henry. Yeah, I know it came out in 2015, but I can procrastinate sometimes. But anyway, I want to get my thoughts because I was actually kind of surprised by the various sci-fi elements they included in this movie. None of which really are original, but they work well together in this film. So Hardcore Henry starts out in a floating lab, which is a cool idea in and of itself. We see from the protagonist's point of view, a man simply called Henry, as he's gifted prosthetic limbs that were removed at the joint. Now, of course, we've seen human cyborgs in movies since The Colossus of New York in 1958, where they put a human brain inside of a machine. And of course, there's classics like RoboCop and Star Wars that has prosthetic limbs. So the use of prosthetic limbs in a sci-fi movie is kind of, not an original idea. Next, we see the scientists make jokes about giving Henry an AI voice. They go through various voices, including Darth Vader's. But we see AI voices more of a thing in 2025, so the makers of Hardcore Henry were kind of ahead of the curve in that technology being so widespread in the future. Next we meet the antagonist, called Akan, the villain of the movie, who is cartoonishly over the top. But Hardcore Henry is kind of filmed in this video game kind of format, so Akan kind of acts like a video game villain. Anyway, Akan has the power of telekinesis, which is the ability to move objects with his mind. We've seen these powers used in video game villains before, such as the famous Psycho Mantis fight in Metal Gear. And honestly, I love Mitochondria Eve in Parasite Eve games, who has probably some of the best theme music you'll ever hear. And Akan is actually an interesting antagonist, as I learned he was a survivor of Chernobyl disaster, which stripped him of all his melanin, which is why his alias is the Albine. He was adopted by a man who ran experiments on him, but it's unknown if it was the experiments or the nuclear fallout from the Chernobyl incidents that gave Akan his power. Akan's villainous plan is to use brainwashed super soldiers to take over the world. Now, we've seen this theory of super soldiers all the way back in the 50s with Captain America, but this idea is actually not too far-fetched. In fact, there has been reports that communist China has been experimenting on creating super soldiers of their own. These super soldiers will have enhanced physical and cognitive abilities. So this is another theme that Hardcore Henry was kind of ahead of the curve on. Throughout the film, Henry was aided by a man named Jimmy, who seems to die multiple times only to come back in different bodies. We learned later in the film that Jimmy was a scientist who actually worked for Akan before he was horribly crippled by Akan for failing to create these super soldiers. Jimmy was able to use his vast mind to create avatars that embody various parts of his personality, and he is able to project himself into these bodies at will. Now, I may be reaching on this one, but passing on consciousness might be the next step in human technology. I mean, we've already seen dictators like Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping discuss immortality by transferring their old organs for new organs. Plus, we've already seen Elon Musk's Neuralink idea, where the human brain interfaces with machines. There's speculation where a student can actually download knowledge via the Neuralink interface. So is it really beyond the realm of possibility that the opposite could be true one day? I'm sure someone out there is theorizing this idea. So in all, I was actually surprised by the various sci-fi elements in Hardcore Henry that seem to be either here or being contemplated right now. While the movie's not the greatest I've ever seen, there are so many great sci-fi elements in Hardcore Henry that I would give them credit for their forward thinking. Plus, it has some really funny elements in this movie, and it's pretty dang violent. And for a guy who makes, videos about toxic masculine movies, I was very entertained. As a Christian, I have to warn that there are a few moments of brief nudity, as one of Jimmy's avatars is a drug-addled degenerate that spends most of his time in a Russian brothel. So I had to avert my eyes for a few moments, and you should know that that part is in this movie. So I want to remind you about my first novel, Fiasco Adventures, that's available on Amazon. It's actually available anywhere books are sold, but people like to buy from Amazon. I also have a Kindle version available where you can get it on Amazon for $9.99. And I want to remind you about my website, themegacosm.com, where I actually have my shop where you could buy it from me directly at a discount. And there's also a short story I wanted to remind you about that's available for 99 cents. It's actually selling very well these days. People are liking this story, so go ahead and pick it up. Also on my website, you can read short stories for free. So these short stories, Liquid Bank, Carry On the Cleaner, and the book, these are available for free. They're all complete. Just go ahead and read them for free. And if you're interested, you can read the first chapter of Fiasco Adventures for free, just to see if it's something that you actually want to purchase. And if my website's not your thing, go ahead and go to my Substack, where you can read pretty much the same stories on my Substack. But my website, I'm actually going to be releasing a book called The Narika Meme pretty soon, and all my available information is going to be on my website. So go ahead and sign up to my website. You can get that information before anyone else. But that's all I want to say about this. God bless you and keep you. That's it, I'm done.